What's up, guys? Today we're going to talk about about Infinity War because it came out. It's 10 years in the making, and we wanted to do two videos on it. I wanted to do one where it's not spoilered at all, so you can watch this, you can get an idea of what we thought of the movie in a general sense without spoiling any obvious parts of the movie, any events, and specifically nothing about the ending. But we'll give you an idea of what we think of it. And then we're going to do a spoiler-filled video that you will not want to go to if you have not seen the movie. But we'll kind of go over it. We'll break down what happened, talk a bit about where we think the part 2 is going to happen, or where it's going to go, because that's happening next year. Next May, it's coming out. And they have a couple movies slated. I know Ant-Man is up next, and then we know Captain Marvel's up after that. They've already done filming and everything on that. So we know a couple of movies are coming out before then. But we're going to talk a bit about what we think about Infinity War starting here. So, Max, while you're there, Max Dreamcastguy joining me today. While you're in the theater, what were you thinking while you're watching this? Because this was a longer movie. This was like 2.5 hours, I think, right? It was a long movie.
Yeah.
What were you thinking when you were watching this thing?
The number one thought in my head is, I can't believe how well this works. When you hear that there's going to be like 40 main characters in a movie, it sounds like it's going to be a total mess. But it isn't. Like, even though it is so long, it almost feels like it's like 5 smaller movies all glued together, and the glue is so good you don't even notice it.
Yeah, it is. They had to pack a lot into this movie, right? Because they had to start with the obvious big bad in this movie, as we've seen, is Thanos, and they had to pretty much tell his story right away and kind of jam all these here. There were a lot of people in this. It wasn't like a couple. Like, it was like a little crossover like we saw with Spider-Man where Iron Man shows up in it. It was like everybody was in there, you know? I mean, we saw in the previews, so it's not really spoilers. You saw Thor, Guardians of the Galaxy, Spider-Man, Iron Man, Black Panther. I mean, it's basically everyone they've been building up in multiple movies for the past 10 years all jam-packed into this. And it was something else.
It surprised me. I really liked that they really divided people up into teams. Like, without spoiling anything, I thought it was cool that basically everybody has their own little mission. And so because everybody really has a time to shine. Like, even somebody like Black Widow, who normally isn't around an Avengers movie that much, actually got like a big one-on-one fight at one point. Like, everybody. I mean, getting to see... I loved Black Panther a lot. So it's cool seeing that come back. But it was also really cool as somebody who's I've missed probably 5 of the Marvel movies. Like, I missed Doctor Strange, but I still felt totally up to speed because when they come in, they managed to all talk to each other without reference. Like, I don't feel like they didn't keep looking towards the past. It was all about like, look, man, Thanos is there. Let's get Thanos. Where is Thanos? I felt like they managed to break everything down so well.
So you didn't see Doctor Strange then? Oh,
no.
That was I actually liked that movie. That was pretty good too. I would check it out. It was actually pretty fun.
I'm definitely going to go back now because it's one of those things where I had no idea. I feel like so many of these movies, after I was actually somebody who had pretty bad Marvel fatigue there for about 2 years, where I just seen so many of them that I just started to catch them sporadically. And now, as weird as it is, Infinity War really kind of reinvigorated that fire. It makes me want to go back and see all the ones I missed because there are some freaking great ones out there that clearly need to be seen.
Yeah, and it's they definitely left a lot, and we're going to talk about this obviously in the next video. Spoiler: they left a lot of plot lines and everything set up for the next movie. So people are going to come out of the movie theater, I think, a little, as you've seen on Twitter and everything, shaken a bit. Not sure what's happening or what's going to happen, and that's actually really cool because they've been filming. They actually filmed everything from what I heard all at once. So they basically did part 1 and part 2 back to back. If they made this one long movie, it would have probably been like 5 hours.
And I bet somebody's going to do it when it comes out the same way people did that thing with where they got the 3 Hobbit movies and they cut out like all the stuff that was less necessary and made it into one like 4-hour mega cut. I definitely think that someone's going to make like a streamlined Super Avengers next year, and it's going to be nuts.
That'd be cool. They should do that in like a special features, like a 1-2 pack, and just make it so you can watch everything all at once with some things cut out. That would be neat.
Yeah.
Ultra. That'd be cool.
Avengers Abridged. Something I really got to compliment them on is, whoa, was the CG good? Like, there's a ton of CG. Almost all the fight scenes are pure CG, and you don't really notice. Like, Thanos basically has his own version of the Avengers. Basically, like dark people have powers similar. Like there's a psychic guy who basically has like the magic powers of Doctor Strange. These characters are completely CG, and you can't tell. It never has that weird like cartoony effect.
I think this movie had a massive budget though. Like it was, the CG was like Thanos himself was very impressive, as well as you were talking about the actor who played him. You would probably have a really hard time recognizing him in real life after seeing him as Thanos.
I'm kind of curious to watch the making of, because I'm sure that Josh Brolin, the actor who portrays Thanos, probably was just walking around on set in a big green screen suit with all like the mocap balls on his face and an actual Thanos glove. Because when he's walking around, like that's something I like the most, is like every character moves just so naturally. Like they all sort of convey their own power. And watching Thanos heft around that humongous Infinity Gauntlet, you're afraid of him while understanding him. That was like, just without spoiling anything, I thought he was such a powerful, well-built villain.
He was a here's the thing though, and we'll probably really talk about this more. People are going to go to this movie and realize who the main character actually is, and it's not who you would think it would be when you're watching it. You know, you think people go into this movie think, who are the poster child? Captain America, obviously,
Thor, Iron Man, and Cap.
And you start to realize who the main character actually is in this movie, and you're a little surprised as you watch it, because I think people are going to go there expecting Thanos to be the typical bad guy who has no real purpose other than to just destroy everything. And then you start to watch it and you're like, he's a pretty deep character. Like there's a massive arc for him just over the span of this 2.5 hours.
Yeah, well, so I feel like as somebody who I like reading a lot of movie reviews, and a lot of people like to make fun of, Marvel usually has a villain problem. Everybody just fights a bad guy version of themselves. The Hulk just fights evil Hulk. Iron Man fights giant Iron Man. So when we were going into this, I was a little bit afraid that Thanos would end up just feeling like a combination of a couple of people's villains that we've already seen. But no, he is a completely wholly unique person in this universe who does not behave like anybody else. He doesn't talk like anybody else, and he doesn't make you feel like anybody else.
Yeah. I really liked him as a character throughout this movie. Going from start to finish. When they introduced him, he was frightening. He was obviously very, very strong, and they made that a point very early on. And that was good, because when you think of the Avengers, you realize they need to have somebody who's obscenely powerful for it to make sense for them to have to come together to fight them. Like Ultron at least made sense because he was like everywhere and everything. In the last movie they did, and in this way, they made Thanos very powerful. So I like that about that, because it was easy to believe that the Avengers would have to come together to fight him.
I mean, there are times when he walks into a room and without spoiling anything, he just basically, like, everybody just gets out of his way. Occasionally, he literally just gets out his giant gauntlet and everybody just clears out. And I like we're finally seeing like a villain who deserves some respect in a weird way. Like, it's like, okay, I want to know about you. Like, even like Loki's a big fan favorite now, but back in the original Avengers, even then he was kind of a joke. He was kind of this paper thin little villain masquerading as a bigger thing than he is. And now we finally see the big thing showing up.
So how do you feel about the overall pacing of the movie?
I thought it was great. The only problem I had is a lot. There are several Marvel movies that literally run right up to the beginning of Infinity War. Like there are several times where you can tell the end credits happened of that movie and Infinity War starts right next. The weirdest part was that there was definitely big tone shifts. That was the weird thing, is the pacing within this movie works. The pacing within the overall universe at times feels a little bit like we got in a car that's in a different gear. Right.
No, I get what you're saying. Yeah, I thought it started pretty quick, but then there were definitely some like very kind of like lulls in the middle that I think just I guess they needed to slow down a few times for some of it to sink in. But it was almost like it was very mountainous, I guess, because it'd be like crazy stuff, and then all of a sudden it's like you're just kind of like, okay, I can go use the bathroom now if I need to.
You're definitely right. Especially towards the beginning, there were certain times where literally without a spoiler, there would be like 5 people standing in a room talking to each other, and then they just hear an explosion outside, and they just run outside, and there's like a 15-minute fight scene. So you'd have literally like a 2-minute conversation where you're actually getting some plot and feeling and some real well done interaction, and then everyone's like, all right, bitch. And so there's times where it's like, did you always, why couldn't they have had that conversation during the fight, or why didn't they give more room for that conversation to breathe? There is the tiniest bit of hurry up and wait going on.
What do you think about the action of the movie, like the fighting, everything? Because I thought it was absolutely awesome.
Yes, so good. And man, so I'm somebody who sometimes I feel like I get lost in modern fight scenes. They try so hard to have like cut. Like I'm a big DC fan. Like I'm even reading a Superman comic right here. But I feel like sometimes Justice League or some of the DC movies have a habit of the fight scene will like zoom in on somebody's fist going into a stomach and then someone's flying through a building. I feel like since everybody's power levels, so to speak, are so close, we really managed to see every single blow of every single fight. It was slow enough. It actually, some stuff felt smaller than the previous two Avengers. And I like that. There was no longer this humongous, like people flying around, entire buildings getting demolished. Instead, it was a lot more like small scale fighting. And so because of it, it was super easy to follow. That was such a smart choice.
Yep. And then they do build up to that, the big battle, most people, big battle at the end. What I liked about, maybe it's just Marvel movies in general compared to DC. DC is a very dark, like the fight scenes are very dark and everything. Man, at Marvel, they shine a light on it completely. Like it was so bright and everything when the big fight's happening, and there was just they did some cuts back and forth, but then you had those long shots. Like my dad even said he was getting a little motion sick at times because it was just a long shot of everything happening, and it would follow people around and stuff, and it was just really well put together towards the end.
Especially stuff like just seeing Spider-Man move around. Like it almost feels like in a crazy way. I'm pretty sure they didn't, but it seems like they got the different directors of cinematography from each of the movies. Because like when the Guardians of the Galaxy show up, it's shot with really like close angles, the way the Guardians of the Galaxy are. And then you see a Peter Parker moment and he's swinging through the buildings with like a really wide angle shot. So you end up kind of getting like a greatest hits of all these characters' previous movies. And it all actually fits.
Yeah. So we're gonna move over to the spoiler side of things here, guys, in the next video, not this one. So if you want to jump to that video, again, in the card above at the beginning, we had a link to it, and we'll also have it in the end card here. Or maybe even show up in the sidebar, but you can jump over if you want to listen to what we think about the ending, some of the events leading up to it, and where we think they're going to go with part 2. But I was joined by Max from Dreamcastguy, so make sure you check him out. Link to his channel is down in the description below, and we'll see you guys in the spoiler episode.